Hi there, welcome to the 13 plus biology interdependence of organisms. So we're looking at, can you label a food web? And food webs start with plants. Plants use sunlight to make their own food. We call them producers. They often photosynthesize. Then we have herbivores, like these insects, that feed on the plants. And we call these primary consumers. We use the word consumer instead of eater, but it means eating. So these are the first thing that eats in the food web. Then we have the frog and the lizard or the salamander. And these two organisms are secondary consumers as they eat the herbivores, the primary consumers. Then we have the third consumer called the tertiary consumer. And here in this food web, it's a snake and it feeds on the frogs and the salamanders. And then we have the bird above them. Now this is unusual. Normally in a food web it stops at the tertiary consumer, but here we have a quaternary consumer, the fourth consumer. And that's the top predator in this food chain. Can you count how many food chains are actually in this food web? So a food web shows a variety of food chains in an ecosystem. Well, we've got one here if we follow the blue arrows, and one here if we follow these orange arrows. And if we go to the bugs, to the salamander, the snake, and then the bird, whether that's a hawk or eagle, and that means we've got 3 food chains in this food web. Okay, now you have to know about how all the organisms are linked in a food web. And what do the arrows show? Well, these red arrows show the direction of the flow of energy. So the sun's energy goes into the plant, and then that energy from the sun that's in the plant goes into the insects, into the organisms in the level above, and then the level above and the level above. So organisms in a food chain show interdependence. This means they're interlinked. We can show this. What would happen to the frogs if farmers killed all of the insects or bugs with pesticides? What do you think would happen to the frogs? Well, the frogs would have nothing to eat. So the frogs would die, and this shows the interdependence of the food web. All of the organisms are linked. If you remove one, the rest of the web could possibly collapse. Now, why is it important that we conserve the organisms in a food web? Conservation of the ecosystem is important. We use organisms within the ecosystem as sources of food, like these apples. Other organisms, like this willow tree, are used for medicines. From the willow tree, we can make aspirin. Aspirin is a painkiller and also has played a role in improving heart health. There may be future medicines in other plants or other organisms that we may find. So it's important to conserve the ecosystem. We use the wood from trees as fuel in this fire. We also use wood for making buildings or for making furniture. Wood is also used in paper. It's important we conserve these. Some organisms in the ecosystem are used in clothing. Think of cotton from the cotton plant or wool from sheep. Ecosystems play a big role in countries' tourism, bringing money into countries, jobs and security for the people. There's also the aesthetic nature or the beauty of the ecosystem that's worth conserving. After all, the world would be boring without beautiful scenes like this. The environment and the ecosystems of the world have inspired artists and poets and writers for many years. Surely this is worth conserving. And what about the fact that humans are the most intelligent organisms on the planet? Doesn't that give them a responsibility to conserve the planet, conserve the organisms and ecosystems that are on the planet? And surely it's important to conserve the ecosystems for future generations so they can enjoy the planet too and enjoy the same resources and ecosystems that we have.